I'm William Andreessen, host of Speaking with Students, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows in the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
What is up, everybody? It is time. It is that time you've been waiting for all week, your whole life, every day. I have an inflated view of our importance in your life. This is the HiTech Podcast. You are joined by myself, Josh, and my co-host, Will. What's up, Will?
What's up, folks? We're doing good. It's another day in paradise.
Yeah. You know? Will is on what looks like a giant pillow seat, and a nice cream-colored wall, in case anybody was curious. Everybody's favorite color of wall. This is
the mobile setup. You know, when I'm not home, I make do with what I got.
Exactly. But it's okay. We're here for another week of the HiTech Podcast, where we're gonna have a lot of fun, talk about educational technology, jump into some fun things. But before I do, I'm going to follow suit from the last time we recorded, where Will asked a fun question, because we haven't really done this in a little while. Mine's very targeted. It's not as broad as yours, you know?
Okay.
Favorite thing about Hades 2 and least favorite thing about Hades 2. Because I know, for context, listener, we've talked about this on another episode. Will only plays the game Hades now, and the second one came out. That's all that's caused him to transition games, and I'm pretty confident. I imagine, Will, when we record, you stop playing Hades, you come here, we record, and then you do nothing but play Hades between that and recording. So I'm just curious.
What you don't even know is that Hades is on my Steam Deck right here, just out of frame, right? Right. That's if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my Steam Deck. No, I am absolutely joking, but Josh is correct. Yes, I've been playing Hades nonstop. It dropped, I think, a week ago. I think it dropped last Tuesday. And I'm a pretty busy person, but I've already got 10 hours into it. I don't know what it is, fam. I love this game. It's a great design. I love the aesthetic, whatever. But it's early access, so technically it's not released. It's not even version 1. They actually put the version stamp.
Oh, they put the version stamp at the top. Okay,
it's like version 9.12 something.
That's how you know it's legit, when you got a crazy version number. Yeah,
I love it. If anybody's played the first one, you get these keepsakes from different characters as you're playing, and the keepsakes are like a conch shell for Poseidon. And I don't know all of them, but like a little skeleton that looks like Skelly from the, in 2, it's early access. Literally all the keepsakes currently are the same icon with the letter A, B, C, D. Each one is just a different letter, because they haven't actually created the illustrations yet.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Keepsakes. Oh wow, that's really early access, because there's early access, and then there's early access, right? Like like Baldur's Gate, when it was early access, like it was, you opened it and you're like, this is a game. It's like mostly done, with the exception of like the levels I can't get access to yet.
Right.
This is like somebody just released this and was like, I'm not sure it's even going to work. Let's hope that this opens.
I'm pretty sure I've seen updates every day I've played, and each time, like, I think I've noticed even small things like, you get boons as you play through the game, and so when you pick up a boon from somebody, it's got like a little line like what it does. Like I'm confident that they keep getting longer, like they keep adding more detail to the boons. Like, what does it actually do? Because they launched it's like one sentence. I'm like, I don't know what that does, but I'm gonna take it and see what happens. And then like they put out patches and it gets just more and more clarity. So
anyway. Those are some deep cut game, and we're not a gaming podcast. Though we might maybe that's the switch the HiTech Podcast is making.
You're just staying with what's on top of mind, right?
You could say that. It's the topic of the day. It's the thing that we were talking about. I don't know. We're trying to make this transition, and it's feeling loose at best. It's feeling like we were aiming for like a Hades early access transition. We more so released a transition. Like that was where we're at. Anyway, yes, it is finally time to talk to Topia. I say finally, like all of you have been dramatically waiting, because that's what Will and I's perspective has been. But
I'll set this up because I already see you looking at the Notion database. So I'll set this up real quick while you find the episode number. We fell in love with Topia I saw you looking during COVID. Early 21, 22, something like that. It's a spatially based video calling platform, and I know that's not even doing it justice. So we're gonna have Daniel on soon. He'll clarify for us, and he'll give us the justice it deserves. But we wanted to, since that episode, talk to them. Yeah. And then it's been a while, but then this year, January 2024, we went to FETC and met their team. We're like, oh my gosh, let's finally meet. Let's have you on. We did an episode. Everybody's so excited. And it's currently April 14th. We will shortly have this interview together. We'll be releasing this episode next week on April. Sweet Christmas. It's May 14th. We're going to release this on May 21st. So it's going to have been almost 5 months since we met the team. It's how long? How many episodes? Where were we when we first talked about it?
So we talked about Topia, episode 82, back in November of 2022. It was during COVID, the height of COVID stuff. And Will and I were really getting into kind of these third space tools. We looked at GatherTown. Topia was another one that we were looking at. We really dug Topia, so much so that we decided to talk about it. And we really wanted to have them on the podcast around that time. And it's not like we've been like actively pursuing it hard. And Topia's been like, no way, HiTech Podcast. It just was like we never really like acted on it.
It's just on
like it's mainly on us. Let's be real. And then we, like you said, we go to FETC. We were like, oh my gosh, it's Topia. We're talking to them. They're making a bunch of changes. We're like, oh, this is really cool. We should talk to them again. And then it's been a battle getting this episode to happen. Just schedules didn't line up, even down to the wire, folks. I had to go screw it up, and we had to move the recording to a different day in the week.
Actually, we squared it up yesterday.
It was day before. I wasn't that poor.
24 hours.
It was completely up to my control, but we had to move it. So anyway, it is happening, and we're going to be talking to Daniel from Topia. We are super excited about this. We're excited to hear really the new stuff. Topia has been kind of promoting some new stuff coming. They've made a lot of changes since 2022 when we've talked to them. And Will and I have talked a lot about this, where I really think some of these like third space environments where you kind of can combine video conferencing with kind of a physical avatar experience, there's a lot more to this being successful in the online space and environment than I think like Meta's VR headsets, for instance, are going to be. Or my favorite, the Zoom plugins are like, don't worry, we can put their face on desks. That doesn't help. I'm super excited about Topia. We've had some concept of it in work environments. Will's had some experience with it outside of education, and we've seen it in education and played with it. So I'm super excited to talk with Daniel about this and learn more about how his technology could help enhance collaboration across teams in education, in project teams, whatever it looks like. I think Topia has some space that could be actually a really super great tool across those fields and areas, and they have some exciting new features I'm ready for Daniel to share with us. So with that said, Will and I have talked long enough. We've talked about games. We've talked about stuff that has nothing to do with Topia. Let's jump in with Daniel.
That's not exclusively true, because Daniel apparently has a background with video games. He at least likes them. Topia is inspired by.
Then we were on purpose on topic. Yeah, look at us. Look how intentional we are. Look how we pretended to not do this on purpose. Like, we're pretending to be disorganized and just talking about whatever we feel like, but really, this was all scripted. Yeah.
I wish.
That's not true. Okay, let's hear from Daniel from Topia. That's it.
All right, folks, the long-awaited interview. Josh and I have been so excited for this for many, many episodes, over, I don't even know, 60 or 70 episodes, but we finally have Daniel Liebeskind with us from Topia. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Been excited on my end as well to join you guys. So glad to be here.
Hey, you've got the cool product. We've just got a hobby cast, but that's all right. We'll take it. Appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into the product. So, like, Topia has the potential to be used for educational purposes. It's obviously for all sorts of experiences, third spaces, or practical, professional. But what got you into designing a tool like Topia?
So Topia is in some ways kind of a hybrid between a video game platform and a communication technology. And when I was a kid, I built video games. I then went into a career in finance. That was a little bit of a detour. But I've been building things for the real-time internet, right? So I've sort of had an obsession around the idea that the internet was going to evolve to be more human and more about
Mm,
real-time communication, real-time connection. And so for about 14 years now, I've been building on a protocol that Google championed called WebRTC, Web
yep.
Real-Time Communication. And Topia is, we now actually have a bunch of patents in proximity-based peer-to-peer WebRTC. And
Hmm.
so this has actually been a decades-long sort of passion of mine, and the idea of being able to make something that is really accessible. So Topia is browser based, right? There's no VR headsets. It's not even 3D models, so very easy to design worlds with PNGs. That was really important,
Wow.
and add a lot of game-like elements. So we have a whole SDK where you can inject all sorts of really interesting social interactions and social experiences, but make it really usable as a communication uh, tool as well. Uh, Topia's in many ways, all the different startups and products that I've built over the last 14 years, Topia kind of rolls them all up into one unified
Hmm.
system. And in some ways, the funny thing you mentioned that Topia can be used for a lot of different use cases.
Yeah.
Uh, Really, we built a technology stack and a solution, and then we kind of went looking for a problem, right? And so education is actually, which is the inverse of what you want to do. But
That's great.
I
yeah,
love it.
That's awesome. I mean, just the fact that you're coming from, so we'll have to do a follow-up episode just on Daniel and building video games because Josh and I love video games. We play them all the time. I think we talked about video games in the intro to this episode, so enjoy that little rabbit trail. But from that in finance to like building a platform that frankly helps bring people together in a more real experience from a digital purpose, right? Like we all know, as long as we've got this stuff between us, we're in a digital world. But the first thing that caught my attention with Topia is that proximity experience. And so, folks, I'll just detail it from my side a little bit. Like as you move around in Topia, you can navigate your character in a digital space, an avatar, I guess. I'll let you correct me in a second, Daniel. But like you can get closer to somebody and they get louder, and you can begin to hear them, and you can get further away from somebody and they get quieter to the point that it mutes them, and then you can walk into a different digital room and not hear them at all, go hear somebody else. That just blew my mind the first time I experienced it. Josh and I were just messing around like, oh my gosh, we're kids in a candy
Yeah.
store.
I had a coworker who just followed me when we were testing. We were testing it because I work in a space where we have a decent amount of remote team members. And so we were just playing around with it. It's kind of like both from an education side and from an office side, Daniel. And I do have to admit, one of our coworkers just decided to keep following me around for funsies, trying to get our proximity thing to pick up. Which was thoroughly entertaining. But yeah, no,
yeah,
it was the same way. That was the thing that really stuck out to me immediately, was just because at the time, a couple of years now since Will and I have originally looked at Topia, that was the thing we hadn't really seen much of yet, which was this idea of proximity based stuff. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I think what Will and I really liked about what you're doing is everything else we had seen in the space had been like VR headset or some kind of technology barrier that often held, in our space, education or smaller teams from being able to leverage anything like that.
yep, absolutely. And the funny and ironic thing about VR headsets, look, and I have VR headsets, but many people that have them, myself included, they sit on a shelf. They're not actually used that much, with the exception maybe of gaming, right? So
Yeah.
Sure.
some people play VR games pretty frequently, but from a productivity standpoint, it's just not used very much. And there have been attempts to create meeting technology or meeting products, things like Topia, but for VR. There was a big wave of them during the pandemic. And often people tried it, it was cool, and maybe they did it a second time, and then that was it. And so, part of the ambition for us was to make it really easy and fun. And so people would do it, would use these things more than just once or twice. And the proximity chat that you guys mentioned is really the core of the entire product. We have a lot of features, which we can get into if you guys want. We have a lot of new features over the last even 6 months, especially around education. We have a ton of really exciting stuff coming out this summer and in the fall. But at its core, this proximity chat is what makes the platform replicate a little bit of the authentic human connection that you have in person. And that was really the goal, right? Because it's not we're not attempting to replace the real world. The real world is amazing, and there's an energy that you can get from being in proximity of people in the physical world. But there are limitations to the physical world, like geographic constraints, right? Everybody having to fly to a conference, right? Or alumni coming to an event around a school, or people living in rural places and doing virtual school. How are they able to then build community in a way that is authentic, that emulates how people actually form connection, have memories together, shared experiences? That was really the ambition that we set out to solve. That was the problem we were solving in the first place.
I recall too, like, so coming off of that problem to solve, for our work in higher education and my previous work in that space, Josh is still, um, faculty come to us with a problem, right? That's what drives us to a solution, like Atopia, like all the ed tech we talk about. When we were in COVID, faculty were coming to me and saying, well, I need to be able to do these kind of gallery walks that we used to do, and that's a term for the classroom, right? Like move around the classroom, do a gallery walk. But if I recall, it was kind of like an exhibition. Like in the physical place I was before, the main lobby of the building we were in got turned into a spot. And there was poster boards, and everybody got to walk around to them. It was both a classroom experience thing, a professional experience thing, because people had to dress up and be able to present whatever, but also like a social thing for the campus that everybody could come through and see these projects. And we're in COVID, and someone goes, how do I do this? That's what drove me towards a product that like Topia, to say, oh my gosh, if we had something people could actually move around in a virtual space while we can't see each other, there's a big opportunity. That's, I know, where Topia kind of grabbed a couple people's attention in my like social spaces and in the academic spaces at that time. But there's a very clear example there where that would be the solution for a classroom problem or situation, very COVID related now. But I think about larger universities and stuff. I came from a university that had over 20 campuses. How do you do something with all the campuses? You really don't. Unless you use something like Topia or a product that can bring folks together in a virtual space to share that together.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And the pandemic was a pressure cooker of problem that needed to be solved, like you're talking about. But what's interesting is that the pandemic also transformed the educational landscape in many ways. Now there's a lot of hybrid learning. There's way more remote learning than there ever was. But there's also a lot of hybrid learning, and people want to be able to leverage their time more efficiently, as they were able to do in the pandemic. And what that looks like practically can mean that they don't want to have to travel to a physical gathering. There are also a lot of cost prohibitions around that. In K-12, one of the things that we find is that a lot of the student clubs and special interest groups that existed pre-pandemic and then were shuttered during the pandemic just never came back, right? And so all of those kinds of things are actually leading. There was an immense need during the pandemic, but there's a persistent need for special things like career fairs, right, where you want to bring employers from all over the country or even all over the world to be able to have, let's say, 40 different employers in a world and then 1,000 students running around like they would at a physical career fair. But instead of doing that once a year and having it be a huge production, you can do that every week if you want. And these are persistent spaces, right? So that can then be a community space where people can go in whenever they want. There's a lot of around adult education. A lot of people that are that have 2 kids and are trying to get a master's. They have very limited time, and even trying to go to a synchronous classroom experience, can be challenging for them. They may have like 15 minutes here or 30 minutes there to actually do their schoolwork, and they don't know a day in advance even when that time is going to arrive. So they kind of need asynchronous learning, but they want the synchronous community building aspect. And so we're seeing a lot of usage around those kinds of things. Tons of other use cases we can get into, but
yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious. We've danced around this a little bit. Like when Will and I first looked at you guys a couple of years ago now, it was a little bit out of what Will was talking about too. I think Will's co-working space at the time had also been using Topia during COVID, and we were just kind of getting interested into these spaces. But at least from our perspective at that moment, you weren't quite as heavily in education yet. And then when we bumped into you guys, or at least your team at FETC, it was like, oh wait, they're like really into education now. Like this is a different. So tell us the story. How did that become one of your guys' big focuses? How did that look for you guys?
So right before the pandemic, we were building VR technology, actually, of all things, and we're building basically this thing for VR. When the pandemic hit, I realized that the time, I didn't have a decade to build this big system that I had the ambition of building. There was a need for this right now, and nobody has VR headsets, and everything that we talked about around that, was true. So throughout all the VR stuff, went browser based. It's just a URL. It can be a button in an LMS or in a CRM or anywhere, or a link. And we did virtual Burning Man, right? We were very consumer oriented at first. We did 2 years of virtual Burning Man. We were one of the official virtual Burning Man experiences. And we had nearly 1,000 subscribers to Topia.io, which was our only platform at the time. It turns out, in hindsight, that about a third of those subscribers were in the education space, but we kind of just, we were like for everything and for nothing. We were really just focused on improving the product, improving the technology. And about 2 years ago, or maybe 2.5 at this point, a AAA game studio called Ubisoft came inbound to us and wanted to white label our entire solution, wanted to run it on their own domain, control their own data. And that brought us down a path of basically building out a deployment mechanism where we could take the entire Topia application stack and deploy it to our customers' cloud infrastructure. So, another way to say that is it's a white label environment or a solution of the entire, the Topia application, all the backend networking, that's patented. All of that then lives in our customer's AWS account or Google Cloud or Azure or even on-prem. And the reason that's important is one of the reasons that we didn't really want to get into education, especially K-12, is there were a lot of privacy and safety concerns that we around that. But when we started going down this path of the white label deployments that were deeply customizable and lived in our customers' accounts, then suddenly a lot of the security concerns, started going away because we didn't own the data. And about 1.5 years ago, we got inbounded by a major education institution that I don't think I can really say the name, but I'll talk about it.
That's all right.
And they have a white label system. We built out a ton of education-oriented features. So we, for example, now tie directly into a school system's identity provider with SSO, and we route students into appropriate worlds based on attributes like the grade, the course, the school that they're in. And so we have really powerful access control. We have a full suite of moderation technologies and tools, including AI-based content moderation. And all of these run within these white label dedicated deployments. And so that really enabled us to go after education. And it just turns out, and we kind of should have known this the whole time, but we have a really solid product market fit. In education, probably stronger than in any other, in corporate or in gaming or anything like that. And we sort of stumbled into it because we got inbounded. But now that we've built out a lot of product for education, it's just very clear that this is, it's a huge market. It's really exciting. Students love the platform. Some of the exciting stuff that, the giddiness and the joy that you guys were describing having yourselves, we're finding that students have that same kind of experience. And when it's safe, the parents love it. Right. And when it's secure and when the moderation is actually very leveraged, this doesn't require more time from faculty. It actually releases the faculty because we have moderation tools that don't make it. They don't have to actually be in the world, right? Like, so you can have a special interest club that doesn't need a facilitator, right? The kids are facilitating their own experience. It's not like Zoom where you need a facilitator putting people into breakout rooms. The platform takes care of that, and kids get to go on their own journey. So that's basically the story of what happened.
Yep. We didn't know. Will and I have been purposely not learning all of the new features you had because we wanted to kind of have a little bit of a live reaction in the video to what we were doing. And the second you were like students going to places based on parameters and grades, I think you might have left Will and I speechless, if that's possible, for a hot second.
Some of our bit is that we are like pseudo tech folks. Like we're technologists, right? Josh and I use productivity tools, software, hardware. I've got the Logitech master mice and keyboards and stuff, so I can do productivity, everything. I love this kind of thing, but we're not engineers, developers. So when you start using some of the more techie language, I'm like, wait a second. I have a good sense of all that stuff, and we want to be able to relay this to our audience who don't have any of it, right? We try and find ourselves to be the middle people for the tech stuff to the folks that just want to use it. And I'll tell you, if you're listening and you got lost in any of the jargon, practically what Daniel said is you can have your cake and eat it too. The idea that you could launch these things for a district to run their own little metaverse, I'll just use that term, broadly as opposed to like as a brand. But like, let's say a district wants to have physical Topia maps or worlds for each of their buildings, and then each of their grades, and then special education, sports, clubs, etc. You've now have a metaverse for this district, and it's not, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's not go to topia.io and log in. It's go to Clever, go to whatever our SSO platform is, click on our district's name world, and they're in. They just go right in, no barrier.
It's actually even better than that. It's a URL that runs on the school district's own domain or on the school's domain. So it could be a subdomain. So let's say it would be like community.launified.com. And when you go to community.launified, it's the entire Topia application, right? So they have an infinite number of worlds, and they can then, the jargon I was talking about is LA Unified, just as an example, and they're not a customer. I'm just using them because everybody knows what LA Unified is, I think, and I'm in LA, so why not? So LA Unified may have, let's say, 15 different schools. Maybe they have 30. I actually have no idea. Let's say they have 15 schools, and then they have the different grades for each of those schools. They can have 300 different worlds that are persistently available. And a kindergartner at one school, when they have a button in their learning management system that says go to community space, they click on the button, it brings them right into the world that's available for K through 2 at that school within that ecosystem, that dedicated ecosystem. And if a third grader at that same school clicks on the button, they go into a world that's meant for 3rd to 5th graders. So a kindergartner and a 5th grader are never in the same, at strict access control. That's determining that. And then across schools, they have different worlds. So a 3rd grader in one school is not getting into a world with a 3rd grader in another school. We actually do have a way to enable inter-school worlds as well, but if you're under 13, that requires parental consent to deal with COPPA. But there's a lot of ways that you can stratify this. You can also say, if you're part of the chess club, then here's the chess world, and the only way you can get in is having that attribute that the district has assigned you in the identity provider with Clever, something like that. We Clever, ClassLink. We integrate with all those things. We can also do it outside of those. If somebody isn't using Clever or ClassLink, we could do direct integrations into a school system's SSO system. And and we're doing the same thing for universities. This makes sense for corporates as well. If you're in a particular vertical or department, then you have access to a specific world that other people don't have access to. And that way, we're making the whole thing secure. Another way to think about this is it's kind of like Roblox in some ways. We have a whole SDK where people can build whatever they want on top, where we build a lot of social experiences for example, and then they have audio only. We have video chat. One of the reasons we can do that is because Roblox is an open platform. Anybody can be in world with really anybody. These are very closed ecosystems, right? This is not an open platform. It is a closed platform that is dedicated to a school district, to a university, with tight access control to a specific experience. And that enables us that security and that safety, and and then the full suite of moderation capabilities that enables us to have proximity-based video chat and actually have it be safe.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I just blown away because Josh and I have dealt with so many difficult tools where you go and knock on this door and it gives you a 403 error, and somebody knocks on that door and you're not allowed. Like all those access issues to platforms, and y'all have just figured it out. Just integrate through so people knock on the door and they end up where they're supposed to be. Love it.
Yeah, I love it. I like the connection into the segmenting too, because that's what I'm thinking of from like a even higher ed, or like your commenting corporate space too, of like that's in many ways what I love about this platform is a great augmenting space, especially in this hybrid online environment that we see ourselves happening in so much, and being able to segment that out in different courses or different environments for students, I think is a powerful tool to be able to leverage for an institution. I love it.
Well, and I think it's critical, right? Like everything that's happening in politics right now, where Congress is grilling social media platforms about how they're making it safe for under 13-year-olds, under 16-year-olds. There's not really great answers, and the reason is that a lot of these platforms were not built from the ground up for safety for kids. It's kind of an afterthought, I think that the world is recognizing that with the emergence of even more immersive technologies and platforms that are available to the general public, but especially to kids, safety actually can't be an afterthought for kids. It needs to be the core of these technologies. And so, we're trying to approach it that way. And you will see with social platforms and gaming platforms, gaming CEOs haven't been brought in front of Congress yet, but it's probably just a matter of time before Minecraft, Roblox, those folks are up there as well. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens here in the short term. But there's even people talking about, the government's talking about expanding COPPA to not just include under 13-year-olds, but under 16-year-olds, right? And so there's this emerging focus on safety for kids online and there should be, right? And so
I had the internet at 11 years old, and there was no protections, no securities like there were today, right? I remember playing SOCOM US Navy SEALs on my PlayStation Portable with my first attachable microphone and hearing things that I didn't know were a part of the English vocabulary. But hopefully we get to improve those things.
So much of what you said just dated you, Will. It was great.
It's
PlayStation Portable. I didn't even know anybody bought that. I'm
savage.
But like those experiences, those gaming experiences, multiplayer community building online are actually very formative for me too, right? I loved multiplayer games when I was a kid. And I think it's actually, I guess there's a debate on this, but I tend to believe that it's important for kids that have a proclivity to want to have online community, that they have a place where they can safely do that, and not where it's just shut off entirely. Because then they're everything for kids is about preparing them for the future. And as an adult, you do have access to those kinds of experiences, and being able to, if that's an area of life that you want to have acumen in, then starting to learn how to, properly create a clan, right? Or, have an online community is actually a very important skill to nurture, but it needs to be done safely for kids.
Yes. Wow.
Well said.
Daniel, you're not only now my favorite for Topia, but also for, perspectives on video games, multiplayer, and its impact at a cultural level for our youth. I'm with you. I'm gonna take us away from the technical for a little bit and just kind of get into use case adoption. So you kind of fell into education. It was an accident. We found 33% of our folks at one point. Wow, we've got all these fit people. Any big success stories have we found? I know if you can't talk about the specific university or name it, that's fine. But we've seen like, oh my gosh, somebody started using it with this one class. Now an entire campus uses it.
Well, most of what we've done so far has actually been what we think of as top down, where we go to an entire system or multiple districts, a system that has 70 schools, and it gets rolled out as an option to all of those schools. And
Okay.
what we find is that some of the schools are more hesitant. There's a spectrum. Some are all for it, and can't wait to get started. And then some are more hesitant because it's online and it might take some time to get used to, and there's safety concerns. That's at least how it was a year and a half ago. Now we've kind of proven a lot of the safety and capabilities, and we've onboarded a lot of these schools that were a little bit more hesitant to do anything. But what we're finding generally is that kids. So just focusing on K-12 for a second, K-12 kids love this. There's so much joy and excitement. Anecdotally, like the quotes we hear from kids, and we do like feedback sessions with kids where they're just raving about how amazing this is. The biggest use case for younger folks is really about community, feeling connected to other kids, in a safe space, but also in a place where there are games and it's multiplayer, and their parents like them being in it because it's not Roblox and it's not TikTok. What we find actually is really interesting is that the younger the kid is, the less structured the experience needs to be. So you were talking about, Josh, I think your colleague was just chasing you around when you were in Topia. So kindergartners in Topia, that's what they do. They play tag, video, proximity video tag. That's their favorite thing. Doesn't matter how many what we call SDK apps, how many social apps we put in the world, they don't really use them. Kindergartners just play tag. As you get older, right, and you get into like middle school, they want more structured experiences, but they can be relatively simple, like browser-based IO games that are these cool social experiences. They like to decorate their locker, so we have an app where you can decorate your own locker. They like to play. We have more like structured race games where you can run around a track and you kind of like you go through the hoops, and you have to go through one hoop before you can go to the next, and then there's a leaderboard. So like middle schoolers love that, and then high schoolers actually really like structured, like integrated curriculum into the worlds, right? And we can do integrations into learning management systems, into CRMs, bi-directional information flows. So you complete curriculum in the world, updates in the LMS. We're LTI compliant. Anyway, throwing a lot of jargon around again, but and then when we get into university, people are really busy. So what we find there is that providing them with an asynchronously available experience for them to synchronously connect with other people and learn together, like going to the library, right? You can go to the library anytime you want, whenever you have free time. But whenever you go there are other people there, right? There might be people from your class there. And so being able to provide that kind of experience is really important in sort of the higher ed space. And then, things like career fairs, really interesting, in alumni gatherings and advisors. Again, those are for older kids and for higher ed. Kindergartners don't care about talking to an advisor. So yeah, it's a pretty big spectrum depending on basically the age of the kid.
That's super cool. I'm a little disappointed at higher ed is not doing more tag, but it's fine. But it's interesting how you're laying out, I think, the differences between the groups, because that was one of my immediate thoughts at the higher ed level was I see a lot of people trying to solve this problem, and we do it through different ways, but like the third space kind of environment for online students specifically to try to like connect or study together. Like there's a lot of this like missed component sometimes, I think, for online students where they feel like they're not able to just access their fellow students in a way they do when they're on a campus or in that space, and creating an environment for them to do that. And I think that's what's so powerful about the proximity based stuff, is it's so similar to what we're used to in real life, where you're near a person, that it adds another layer that like a Zoom Brady Bunch vibe does not give you in the experience. Now I'm curious from like a just access point and how people get in. I'm going off our normal questions because I just have more of a personal thought and question around this. How easy is it for like institutions or groups to bring in, for instance, like guest speakers or things into their own Topia environment? Is it fairly simple for them to be able to do that?
Yeah, so access control is on a world by world basis.
Okay.
And so you can make a world that is either accessible via SSO, right? So you're a student at the university and you have these attributes so you can get in, or you're on an email list, right? Or you have a password, or there's a bunch of different ways. Our sort of normal Topia access gating can be used within an ecosystem. It's not just that only students can get in. Being able to enable parents to get in, even if they don't have a login, is a pretty frequent use case, even in K-12. And then, in higher ed, it's bringing in professional development folks or bringing in potential career, job fairs. But yeah, there's a lot of flexibility in how you actually do access control on a world by world basis.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, that was my thought. I've done in similar scenarios in a course where maybe you want to bring in a handful of experts, and while sure you can bring them into a Zoom meeting or whatever you want to do, I think a cool environment is like, man, set up like a space for them to come into like a Topia environment, and students can rotate through talking to people or have chats and people be available. It's that type of stuff like you're saying that you do at a career fair, you might do in an in-class experience, but can be a similar environment here. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and even take like an FETC or an ASU GSV or an ISTE or any of these things. One of the powerful things about a conference is that people are willing to give you their time when they're there, right? People that you may not otherwise be able to schedule a structured meeting with. But they're willing to meet you at the conference because it's less formal. It can be like a 10-minute, meet and greet. And so you can do those kinds of things in one of these Topia platforms very easily. And there's a lot of benefit to that, right? There's still benefit to structured meetings. But if you want to get a job and you're thinking about either going to a career fair or trying to schedule with everybody that attends the career fair in one-on-one structured Zoom meetings, it's going to be hard to get those structured meetings. But if you go to the career fair, you can rub shoulders, you can have all these serendipitous connections, and then you can follow up with scheduled meetings. And that's kind of how it works in real life. And that's how it should also work digitally.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super cool. So Dan, I'm gonna shift gears here for just a second, and we'll try to be careful of not having you reveal anything you're not supposed to. So I'm gonna say that beforehand as a joke. Any new kind of upcoming features you guys are really excited about that is maybe something that people don't know quite as much about? I know you said obviously we talked about the proximity thing being the base, but you're adding a lot of different components to what you're doing. So be curious. Anything you're like super pumped about feature wise?
I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm pretty pumped about. What can I tease out there? So right now we have students across these deployed ecosystems actually spending over 1 million minutes a week in connecting to each other in platform. And our ambition here is to continue to make the experience even more engaging, more exciting, something where people want to come in and hang out and engage with one another and play games. And so one thing I'll maybe just tease here is that from a technical perspective, we have an SDK, which is a set of developer tools that enable any developer to build experiences on top of our core platform and really and inject those experiences into the world. And this is an open API. It's a set of SDK developer tools, so anybody can build anything they want. And use them within Topia.io. That's kind of like our consumer sandbox now. We also, we haven't really told people about this yet, but we have Schoolspace.io, which is our education SaaS. So that's if you don't want a dedicated deployment, but you want all of the safety features or many of the safety features that schools would want, you instead of creating a world on Topia.io, you would create a world or a series of worlds on Schoolspace.io. So that's one of our newest things that we're doing. And we are adding a lot of new capabilities to the SDK to create much more immersive kinds of games in these worlds. So imagine, you're running around with your avatar in the world, and you walk into a space, and suddenly your avatar transforms into a spaceship, and now you're in like a shooter game where you're flying around with a spaceship, and the other avatars are also spaceships, and you're connected over our same peer-to-peer encrypted video chat, but you're in a fully immersive video game. And then you just go to the edge of that zone and you become your Topi character again, and you walk over to another game, and now you're in that. And so solving sort of matchmaking with spatial connectivity, leveraging our patented peer-to-peer networking capabilities, and creating much more immersive, really interesting kinds of experiences, especially for for high schoolers and higher ed, and people that are not kindergartners and don't just want to play tag, but actually want more engaging experiences. So imagine like having 1,000 Mario parties in parallel in a world, and the way you join a party is you just walk your avatar from one party to the next, and you're going between games. So that we have not talked about publicly, and I'm probably not supposed to really talk about it, but we're launching that version of that this summer.
Amazing. That's going to be summer 2024, folks. So that's in the future, but hey,
Oh
that's
my
awesome.
gosh, I love that so much.
That's what I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah,
You and me both. I'm thinking of the parties we're having this summer.
Yeah, we also, I guess I'll just I may as well just talk about all the really cool stuff that's coming. Anybody that has built a single player experience in Unity or Unreal, like a lot of universities, like ASU even, right, as an example, has a really cool single player metaverse, quote unquote metaverse experience that where there's really no social connectivity, but it's an immersive education experience. So we are building a capability, and this will come out in the fall, but to turn any of those single player experiences into socially connective experiences like Topia with proximity connection, and tying directly into Unity or Unreal. We have an SDK for each of those that we're building out. So think of us as like a social connectivity backend engine that can power any kind of experience now to become proximity chat, right, or social connectivity. And we have data connections. The way we're doing our audio videos, we're actually establishing data connections between avatars that are encrypted tunnels between devices. And so we send audio and video through those, but you can actually send any kind of data through that. So it opens up a huge possibility of all sorts of really interesting community capabilities for anybody that has built anything, really.
Are you familiar with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Not just the general thing, but like specifically the movie with now I'm not gonna be able to pull up his name, but the old one.
The one where the people
Gene
were lying in
Gene
bed
Wilder.
all day?
Yeah.
Gene
I mean,
Wilder,
the one where
yes,
where
yep.
it was supposed to be a kids movie, but there was a lot of murder and there's a creepy
Yeah,
tunnel
yeah.
in the beginning.
This is Wonka Vision. This is the beginning of Wonka Vision. Someday we'll figure out how to put atoms through that encryption tunnel, but like you're doing the digital equivalent of Wonka Vision, where my virtual entity can be present with Josh's virtual entity. Like right now, we are sending back and forth our video image to each other, but we're static. It's even maybe even closer to Star Trek, where where they figure out how to beam somebody onto a moving target, right? Like you have not only taken the static experience of exchanging data information, but let's move the data and information, and let's even connect it at the same time to more than one person. I'm
I mean,
blown
even
away.
even and there's a reason I haven't really done podcasts now in like a year and a half, and it's because I really have no filter and I get excited about things. But I'll even say, a lot of people are talking about spatial compute. Apple released the Vision Pro, right? And there's things like the Neuralink. Maybe there's a future where we can actually send thoughts to each other via Neuralink, right? But if you were sending thoughts to each other, let's say you walk up to somebody, you both have a Neuralink, and you're sending a thought to them, there's two ways that thought gets them. Either it goes through a server, and whoever is running that server could theoretically just be listening to all your thoughts. Do you want to be sending those thoughts through a meta server for them to farm you and serve you targeted ads based on your thinking? Or do you want an encrypted tunnel between you and the other Neuralink device? And that's what our technology does. So in terms of what we're building towards the future, and this is probably going a little bit over our skis for the topic of this podcast.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. I love it.
So Will and I are processing so much right now mentally. That's what's happening.
This isn't the last podcast episode I do, I hope. I'm gonna be very transparent. I might edit this moment out moving forwards. Well, no, not backwards, forwards. Would you be okay with me showing Topia on screen?
Sure.
Oh, right. We've got his word here. Josh, I'm not even going to ask Josh. I've got this prepared because one of our last questions was more about this idea of, how do we get folks started, right? And a lot of times with ed techs, it's like, oh, go find this register button, go find this. Blah, blah. but that can take some time. And now we've said a lot of technical jargon, but good stuff throughout this call. Some folks may still be scared of this. I want to make the point right now. I'm not even going to ask Daniel how to get started. I went and signed up while we were talking, and I made this world here. So I don't see you all at the moment. You let me know if you're seeing this all right. Is this coming through,
Yep.
Josh?
Yeah.
All right.
You mean the purple fox that you've decided to
I
be?
picked the purple fox. You got it. This is Topia, and in a second I'll let Daniel start to point us to a few things, but I want to make the case that I did this in about a minute or so while Josh was saying something like 15 minutes ago, and I got into this world and got this set up, and I got my little character already made, and he's moving around. So Daniel, is there some things you'd like to point out to our listeners as we get started with, like, if they were jumping into Topia for the first time, what's something that they want to try out right away?
So first of all, you created this world, so you're the owner of it, right? And that means that you are an admin. And editing worlds is really easy. So you can see all these little pencil marks all over the world. If you click on one of these, you can click move, for example, and you can see you're just moving that around. And anybody else that's in the world with you will be able to see you moving that around as well. It's kind of like a Google Doc, so easy for collaboration. All of these images are also PNGs, so they're just simple images. There's no 3D modeling. You can upload any kind of image you want and place it right into the world. There's a lot of advanced capabilities as well, but you're actually in edit mode. So that's an important distinction here. As you were moving your avatar around, the world actually didn't move. Your perspective didn't move because you're in edit mode. So if you click on the left panel there, there's a toggle that says edit. If you click that, then we're going to zoom in and we're now focused on you. And if you move around, now you're not in edit mode. You're not going to see all those pencils. And so there is a builder capability. We're actually launching a new builder that's going to be even easier again this summer. We got a lot going on this summer. And, inside of this world, I don't know if you have anything interactive, but if you can maybe click on that, the edit, go into edit mode again. And you'll be able to see that you can highlight, let's say, the desk. So click on the desk and go to edit. So here you can go to the top thing, the media, right? So you can add, for example, an audio link. So you could put a sound in this world, and you can just take it from YouTube, and it's just a sound, and you paste in the link, and you choose the radius for where people can hear it, the volume, and that's it, right? And that's as simple as making something interactive. You can also add videos that either pop up as a sort of like a pure video, which is looks like it's another person that you've connected to over proximity chat, or that'll actually show up in the world itself. You can also, if you look at the other tabs here, you have media, you have links. Links are also really powerful. This is how you can embed any third-party application or website into the world, and you can open those based on proximity. So when somebody walks near this, it can open as a drawer or as a modal, or you can make it where they have to click on it. You can also make teleports. You can portal to other worlds. You can display text. You can also trigger webhooks. So for the developers, that is a way of actually sending a message to your server. You can catch the message with the server, and that'll give you a payload of information about the interaction that just happened. And then you use our SDK, which is just an NPM package, to actually update something in the world. And what this practically means is you can make it where somebody walks up to the desk, and that fires something to a server, and then we use our SDK to actually make like fireworks happen because the person walked up to the desk. And that's an example of the kind of custom experiences you can build in here. And we have dozens of these kinds of custom experiences we make available to customers. But then you can go and build whatever you want on top of that and own all the IP of all the products and integrations that you create. And we have a whole event system. You can control the settings. So the little gear in the bottom left is world settings. We don't have to go through all these, but you can customize whether people can actually come into the world based on a password, whether it's open access, whether it's anonymous. And this is all in Topia.io, by the way. So all of these settings are available here because this is our consumer sandbox. In a deployed ecosystem, an admin will have the settings that the administrator of the entire ecosystem has made available to them. So a dedicated deployment might decide, for example, there is no video chat, it's just audio chat. A specific world would not be able to enable video chat. So you have deep customization of the UI and the capabilities and the features when you have your own deployment, but even on a world by world basis, you're able to control all of those kinds of things.
This is just amazing. You know, I'm blown away by the fact that I clicked through a couple things real quick and I'm in a world already. You're showing me with some quick, easy clicks how I can make more of these objects, remove objects, right? So this is a custom world already. It was stock, it was handed to me stock, but I can come in here, hit edit, and I just don't like this couch, so I can remove it. Done. You know, I don't like this little guy, remove it. This is already a custom world. But then you're saying I can trigger videos, trigger audio, trigger experiences, interactions. Like, I'm thinking of a practical purpose of this desk, right? Where if this desk represents the instructor or the instructor's location, maybe going up to it gives the students access to the instructor if they're not present or something like that. It can help call to the instructor. There's so many what ifs that I'm already just amazed by. In what are we talking here? A couple minutes worth of time. I'm zooming out, folks. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 distinct rooms at least here by default, with a basketball court and a little bit more. This is ready to go just by clicking in after a free get started demo. And I'm playing with this actual real world. So I love the design. I love the visual elements. I love how much control you're giving. There's so much more control than just the simple stuff, right? That, like you're saying, webhooks, these technical engagements, we might need some experts here. Like, I'm thinking that there's a space for like full-time Topia consultants who could come into districts and just support these kinds of optimizations, because I know faculty, I know kids are going to love playing around with this and making this their own, and making 6 of these little guys, right? I could just see a little army of these things, just cuz again, a kid either wants to play tag or they want to build their room to look like it's their thing. But making those ultimate spaces that will be a part of teaching and learning and that actual experience, like, I see it. I can see it myself. I hope that our watchers, our listeners are able to see it as well. Cutting that off the screen. Sorry about the quick transition there, but that should bring us back to this process. So thank you, Daniel, for jumping into Topia with us. And if you folks were just listening, you're going to have to get on YouTube, because that stuff is just way too cool, and check out the visuals.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one thing that we didn't highlight there, because I didn't jump into the world with you, is the actual proximity chat.
Right.
And so Topia is best enjoyed with at least one other person. And these worlds are capable of handling hundreds or even thousands of simultaneous users. So,
Wow.
it's not easy to get a few hundred people to actually show up synchronously to something. But it's basically unlimited scalability that way. And so it's really wild when you see like 200 people all walking around, engaging in small group conversations, playing games, moving around, moving between those conversations. It's really something to see.
That's
Super
amazing.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope that this is not the last time Topia is spending time with the HiTech Podcast, but we really appreciate this as the first time, because it's been a huge splash for me. I'm like glowing with excitement about what's going on with the product, but even seeing it again and getting into it, it's just so much fun. So thank you so much, Daniel.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. And yeah, we should do it again sometime.
Maybe next time we do the podcast in Topia. There's the pitch, right? We go in and we launch with each other. Folks,
great.
head over to topia.io. We're gonna do a little bit of debrief here in just a second, just me and Josh. But we thank you again, Daniel. Have a great day. All right, folks, we had such a great time with Daniel. I hope that you enjoyed getting to see Topia on screen. For those of you who went to YouTube, went to Spotify, and watched the episode, if you listened, go back, just watch that little segment so you can
Or
see
imagine
what the
it.
heck is in.
You can imagine it in your head.
Oh,
That's too
in
true.
a world. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
shouldn't sing, right? Don't sing. I forgot. Don't sing. Don't sing. Topia is just like, if I could make my own little video game world and live in it, that's to me what Topia is. Like, there's part of me just kind of like, I want to go hang out in Topia. Like, I don't need like, I'd love to have friends.
It looks pretty cool. We've seen a couple of these tools a couple of years ago when we were talking about them more at that time, and Topia's definitely come out, I think, on top in that area a little bit for me. Like, they
Yeah.
They've really polished their experience. I really like how they're looking to kind of build on top of the core piece, the proximity stuff, like the proximity call and video conferencing type of vibe, but building on top of that other stuff like games and immersive experiences to like other things. Like I can't wait to see the whole thing with Unreal Engine and what they might be doing there. Like they could be the ones to finally take that space to like the next level. People have been trying to figure out how to leverage Unreal Engine and gaming components to like build learning experiences and build collaboration digitally. And I think they've got a cool key here with safety around it as well. I hope people pick that up when you're listening to Daniel talk. One of the things I really appreciated about Daniel in this conversation was, listen, I'm here all day for trashing some of our Silicon Valley people and the way they're using, especially social media, the way they're using data and what they do to society in general. And Will and I have talked about that plenty of times on the podcast, both from positive and negative standpoints. Will and I are not, I hate all social media. Will and I are also not lovers of social media. It's a reason why, as you'll find out, somebody else got hired on the HiTech Podcast to help with social media.
We need some help, and so
so it's not our strong suit. But I like that they're going at it from a secure standpoint right from the beginning. Like, how do we protect not just kids, but students in general, whatever ages, and people? Like, how do we create an environment where people feel safe to share their information and share what they're doing without feeling like their data is being mined and by a guy who can't answer in Congress where they put their data? Yeah, I'm looking at you, Meta. I like that perspective. But just from a fun standpoint, I just think it's super cool. There's a lot of stuff you can do in it, and I really like how Topia has leaned into both young ages, but older ages as well. I think their ability to create specific curated areas that students can be put into based on what class they're in, based on what their activities are, what type of needs they have. Like, that's huge. And I think this could really be a useful tool. If there's somebody in an institution listening to this right now and you have an online program, I think this could be an incredibly powerful tool to create community in your online program in a way that you don't, I'm not going to say probably, that you don't have right now. I don't care who you are. You don't have it. You can try to tout that you do, but it is not. As much as I think there's a lot of benefits to online. This is not me hating on online. I'm in the online space. I think there's a lot of benefits to the online space. That said, there is still a community issue that people have not been able to get around, no matter how good they are at it. There are some that do it better than others, but there's still something that students will articulate is missing from that community aspect. And I'm not saying Topia could solve that entirely, but I do think Topia could help bridge the gap in a way that some of our, like, we'll just have Zoom meetings has not solved, or I'll put that discussion in my class that none of my students ever use to ask questions. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, even the third space stuff Will and I have talked about. We've talked about Discord. We've talked about using Slack. We've talked about using those places. And all those are super helpful and can help. But students have to engage with it. And I do think like this type of environment brings something kind of whimsical and fun that would actually encourage students to engage with it in a way that like just another chat tool that they're used to using on Facebook and other social media platforms is not going to bring them in quite the same way when they're in the midst of all the busyness of trying to get their work done.
Yeah, 100%. And it's an environment of built to be explored, right?
Yeah.
Like when we set up a Topia and kind of made the point in the episode, kind of made a point showing it, but like I want to reiterate, like you don't all have to be in the same virtual space at the same time. You're in the same world, right? Everybody goes to the same world to work together, the same classroom, whatever. But like students can walk away from each other. And you may already be thinking of classroom management issues, blah, blah, blah. That's real life. There's they do that in your real classroom. So of course it's going to happen in your digital classroom, but Topia gives you tools to address that. You can make announcements, you can make larger posts, you can pull people back in together. There's lots of things you can do with Topia, but allowing for kind of the natural organic exploration of an environment at the same time as being in a controlled classroom experience, right? Like we can have both and with this kind of platform where Zoom, like I love the breakout rooms kind of for what they did in COVID, maybe, but like they're so sanitary. Like there's something to the fact of like, I'm in my little box, you're in your little box. Oh, we're just going to go off in a whole new little set of rooms by our own little black boxes. Zoom breakout rooms don't engender this experience of exploration, engagement, novelty, curiosity, etc. And that's what Topia is built to do. Get in there, explore, engage, walk away from each other, play tag, play solitaire. I bet you, if it doesn't exist already, somebody's going to make like a little solitaire game in there in one of the SDKs, right? It's such a ripe world. And frankly, educators, if you're listening, I'd tell you to get on top of this sooner than later. Get yourself some ChatGPT, figure out how to write some SDKs, right? So I know I'm tossing down a bunch of acronyms. Don't be scared of this. Go ask ChatGPT, how do I make an SDK? Get into Topia, learn with their materials and stuff like that. Start doing this, because Minecraft is one of these tools, and one of those learning tools that has come up where I know of entire contracting groups who just build Minecraft servers. They're paid to build Minecraft servers. Get into Topia early, start making SDKs, start making games, start making learning experiences in this kind of world and platform. And you can be the one running the contracting group making SDKs for Topia, like people are doing in the Minecraft server space. Like, you want to be on something like this early because the opportunities are rich. To that point about SDKs, no idea what we're talking about, the acronym, like whatever, it might sound weird. Head over to topia.io/SDKs, SDK-demos. So we'll put that on screen so you can, they'll be in the notes, whatever. But like, you can go play some of these and get a sense for what it is. How does it actually work? What do we want to be doing with these tools? Because, just having all this jargon we talk about during the episode isn't going to help you as much as like getting in there and trying it out. So I think that if you want to hit it, head over to topia.io/SDK-demos, play a few, see what they're like. Share them with some friends. Get some folks on with you at the same time. Got a teacher group that works on things together. Hey guys, jump into this link with me real quick. Let's play a game, and see how you feel about it. I think it's worth the time.
Yeah, I would agree. And for context, we did not ask Daniel to clarify what this was during the episode, but SDK just stands for Software Development Kit. In case anybody was curious, not anything crazy fancy, and it's just basically this idea of being able to like develop on, basically creating kind of a kit for people to develop on top of, right? And like create stuff. You don't have to be some like crazy coder to work with this type of stuff. Usually it's usually built with the idea of like a lay person in mind, being able to create other stuff who might have a slightly more technical interest than the average person.
Right. If there are any barriers, again, just talk to ChatGPT. I've used ChatGPT 3 times this week to like figure out formulas, work with code, do whatever. It'll explain it to you. Ask GPT.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. So play around with it. I think it's a super cool tool. I think it has a lot of uses, both for education, professional stuff. Like you don't have to be in higher ed or K-12 to use this type of tool. I think like businesses could benefit, especially with their hybrid employees, from creating environments like this. Whether it's like a digital office space that people can go to, or that they can just kind of jump into, or, decide for your lunch hour, people can jump into here and fake eat things. I don't know. I want to create an escape room in one of these. I think would be pretty cool, like with the links and password creation that you can do. I think you could probably leverage all that to create some escape room stuff. I think that could be kind of cool.
Yes. And then they can work together doing it. Oh my gosh.
They can have fun trying to like figure out solutions, go to different rooms. It wouldn't look exactly like an escape room per se, but like, I mean, the link stuff that Daniel's talking about, like you could easily, like, just for context, like create like a puzzle that's linked in the room that's like a Google Doc or something, and like there's a password to get to the next one, and the next one, and you hide the passwords through puzzles around the room, and maybe like, because I know you can password lock different portals to other places. Maybe you can password lock, like there's some cool features I think could be leveraged in many different ways. So yeah, go check it out, Topia.io, and there will definitely be more coming from us at Topia. We had some fun conversations with Daniel after the episode about some ideas that we'll be doing.
All right, folks. Next episode is 151. Holy smokes, we've got too many episodes. This is wonderful. We're going to talk about notifications. Kind of a good conversation, kind of a check yourself conversation. We're going to see how it develops. We'll be having a little bit of fun of it. I've always thought about this as notifications as like tyrannical, like they run your life. So I want to talk about some ways you can take back the control, hold on to them, use them effectively, make sure that they're working for you, for your classroom, anything like that. Also talking about Loom. We haven't talked about Loom since episode 11. on the podcast. It's 140 episodes ago. There's been a lot of big updates. We're looking forward to that next episode, 151. As always, check us out on Twitter, YouTube, all those good things at HiTech Podcast. If you would like to come on the podcast, if you'd like to ask us a question, you need some information about a tool we've talked about, email us, inbox at hitechpod.us. And our website is hitechpod.us at all times. Go there for our episode pages. Go there for information. Buy us a coffee. We love you. It'd be great. Appreciate that. Subscribe, like, share, all those fun things. Thank you again for joining us for another week as we continue to learn what it looks like to harness technology in the classroom, whether it's online, in Topia, or in person. Until next time, we'll see you.
See ya.